Hi everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. A bitch is back talking about books. And today what I wanted to discuss is how out of pocket smutty books are. Let me give you a little backstory, okay? I started getting into reading around 2020 during COVID. That's when I went down the little spiral of reading an insane amount of books and falling in love with reading again after middle school. I was a Percy Jackson kid and I was really into reading in middle school, and then you go to high school, you go to college, you fall out of love with reading, you don't read at all unless it's necessary for school, and then 2020 happened, you have a lot more time on your hands and you start reading again. You start with young adult. You start with young adult fantasy, reading these cute little books. Then you go into contemporary romance, really cute. Some of them start being a little more like erotic and they have maybe one or two scenes, and then get into reading ACOTAR, and then you fall deeply in love with ACOTAR, and ACOTAR is kind of a little, you get to book 2, book 3, there's a little steam in there. You gotta like clench your thighs while you're reading it. And then you get into smut, just straight up smut, and then you get TikTok recommendations of these like insanely smutty books. And that is where we are today. I love to still switch it up. I read fantasy, I read romance, I read fantasy romance, and I read smut, I read WAP, I read anything, okay? If you look at my Goodreads list of books that I want to read, there is a variety of things that I should be very embarrassed of maybe, because that's straight up porn, and things that are considered, literature or really good, amazing writing. And if you want something that you can just turn off your brain, you don't need to stimulate your brain, you just want to dissociate from the world and have a good time, smut is where it's at, right? Romance, smutty books with little to no plot, or they do have a plot, but it's not what is promoted about the book. That is where you should go if you just want to have a good time, you know what I mean? You want to read one-handed or something. Recently, I've been in a slump. I've been in a reading slump, and I read a couple books. I've read actually a lot of books during the slump. It's just like I've been in a YouTube slump. Like a lot of these books, I just don't feel like I have enough opinions on them to make into YouTube videos, or I just don't like the books enough to make YouTube videos. I just want to talk about how out of pocket these books have become and how hilarious they are to read. I'm going to talk about 2 books, okay? I'm going to talk about the book Hooked, which is part of the Never After series, written by Emily McIntyre, Hooked by Emily McIntyre, and another book called Priest by Sierra Simone. I've seen these books all throughout social media. A lot of people talk about them. They both are very smutty books. And I read smut a lot, but there was something about these 2 books that the smut just made me cackle. Like, it was so out of pocket and funny that I just like could not help but laugh. And I'm very sorry. Like, I am that person that I don't ever want to judge a person for the types of books that they read, because I read, all different types of books. Whatever is like your thing, I don't want to judge you for liking that thing, but I will say my opinion on it. Like, if I didn't personally like it, I don't ever want anyone to feel judged for liking certain books, because it's all really based on opinion. Whatever you want to read is what you want to read. I hate people who judge others, or I hate like that section of like book talk and other things where people are judged for loving ACOTAR. And then there's a whole nother community that like is a Sarah J. Maas hater. Like, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It doesn't affect your life if someone loves reading that. It really all is personal preference. And I really believe that. So whatever opinions that I have, a YouTube video that I've made, I don't want anyone to feel bad for liking the books that maybe I didn't personally like, okay? I want people to know that if you liked it, I respect your opinion, okay? Because it is all that, it's just opinion. So with these 2 books, Priest and Hooked, the smut for me was so out of pocket and funny. Like, I've read so many smutty books. Let's start off with Hook. I just want to give a few quotes. I want to say first off that when I was reading this book, I laughed out loud at a lot of parts. Okay, so let me give a little synopsis of what Hooked is about. Hooked is a present day kind of retelling, or they use a lot of things with the Peter Pan story. So Hook is basically the main character, like the main protagonist, and he's like this dark villainous dude. He's basically kind of like a gangster, and Wendy is like his love interest. And then what I do really appreciate about this book is that they use a lot of the Peter Pan mythology, I will say, and incorporate it into this book really, really well. And I thought that the plot, especially towards the end, I was like, ooh, like the twists and turns of this book, like the plot of this book, I was like, wait a minute. Like, this is really interesting. This plot was really, really interesting. And a kidnapping storyline. It's a revenge plot against Wendy's father. Like, Hook, the character, wants revenge on Wendy's father, aka Peter Pan. That's the whole plot. And then there's use of this drug called pixie dust. You know, faith, trust, pixie dust, a lot of that stuff. I really like how they incorporated all of the Peter Pan mythology into this book. So that's kind of like the synopsis of the book. It's a retelling of that. I really like the twists and turns. And yeah, that's kind of like my little brief review of the book. I want to talk about the smut though, because the smut in this was so funny. It was just so extra, and I think that this just doesn't follow the kinks that I'm into, maybe. Let me just give you a quote, okay? Let me just give you quotes that I highlighted from this. It's just so funny. My lengthens at the thought of driving inside her until she breaks, leaving wounds that scar with the reminder I was there, tarnishing her innocence and then tossing her at her father's feet, a defiled version of the girl he bred. Delicious. I'm sorry, what? Pardon? Why did that make me laugh? That is so out of pocket. Anyways, one thing I will say about this book is that the banter is really good. Like, James, aka Hook, he knows how to dirty talk. Here's another quote. I hadn't planned to come inside her, but the thought of her swelling with my child right in front of her father's eyes, right before I slit his throat, had my tightening and shooting out of my tip before I could even finish the fantasy. What? Maybe I don't have a breeding kink, but this man's thoughts were like so out of pocket. He was like, ooh, like my balls are tightening from the thought of like killing her. What? I don't know why reading this was so funny to me. Like, the thoughts are so dark, quote unquote dark, that they just straight up sometimes sound like satire, and that was funny to me. And these like smutty books are getting out of hand. So that was Hook. A little bit of the smut in Hooked. If you've ever read this book, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I do want to know your thoughts because I actually really found the plot of this story to be pretty interesting. It was like very, very fun to read, the plot. Hook in his headspace, that was so out of pocket. And then we get to Priest. So if you want to know a little synopsis about the book Priest, it follows a priest named Tyler. First of all, hate that name. I realize I've never read a main character who's a guy named Tyler. And I don't know if I like it because it's giving Tyler Lockwood from The Vampire Diaries. And every time I read the name Tyler, I can just only imagine that actor. It follows a priest named Tyler and his romance with this girl named Poppy. As a priest, Tyler is supposed to be abstinent, like he's not supposed to have sex, and then Poppy comes into his life. And Poppy is this like uber sexual person, and he just can't but help feel an attraction to Poppy. Then they start a relationship, and it's kind of like a forbidden romance because he's not supposed to be doing any of that. And there's stuff from Poppy's past life that come back to haunt her. I will say the love in this was kind of like, okay, like y'all fell in love way too fast. But I do like one thing about this book is that I like how sex positive it is. and I like portrayal of Poppy and how sex positive she is and female sexuality, because Poppy is super, super sexual. But some of the way that she was being really sexual is kind of unrealistic. Like, really? I didn't really give this book a high rating. I gave it like a 2 out of 5 stars. I feel like the love in it was just kind of like whatever. And then the third act conflict irked me so much. I was so annoyed. And I don't like the character of Tyler. Tyler, aka the priest, as a character, he was fucking annoying. And this is what is out of pocket with this book, okay? Tyler was so annoying as a character. I don't know why I hated him. I did not like him, and I did not like that we were in his headspace for the entire book. Because you could tell this book was written by a white woman. You could tell this book was written by a white woman through the internal dialogue. So first off, the third act conflict. Let's talk about the third act conflict, okay? We're going to get into a little review, because this is like fresh in my head, this book. The third act conflict, spoiler alerts, I guess, but like most third act conflicts are the same in romance books, like they break up. It's the whole miscommunication thing. It felt like it came out of nowhere. Am I missing a chapter? Am I missing a chapter? Because Poppy gets back with her ex, and like Tyler sees Poppy kissing her ex, and he's just like, oh, that's it for me. Like, Poppy doesn't want me. And Tyler just assumes that Poppy got with her ex. And then they spend months not talking to each other. I'm like, no conversation was had. You have her number, Tyler. You have Poppy's number. You couldn't even call her and be like, hey, so like, are we broken up? Like, nothing. No communication whatsoever. He just kind of assumed that Poppy left town with her ex. And then months later, they come back and meet up because Tyler finds Poppy in New York, opening a dance studio, etc., etc. And I was fucking annoyed at Poppy too for this, because Poppy's mentality of like how shit was supposed to go down made absolutely no sense. So first off, the reason why this third act conflict happens is that Poppy's ex comes back into her life and tries to blackmail Tyler and Poppy so that Poppy gets back with him, like gets back with her ex. And the ex has dirt on Tyler and Poppy, because as a priest, you're not supposed to be having sexual relationships with anybody. And there is photographic evidence of Tyler having sexual relationship with Poppy. And the ex blackmails him and says, hey, like, I'm going to release these photos and ruin your career if you don't give me Poppy, basically. And that's like the whole third act conflict. And Poppy's like, I don't want him to ruin his career for me. I don't want him to ruin his career for me. So that's the whole reason why she was like, I wanted to drive you away. I thought I had to drive you away because I didn't want to ruin your career. When in reality, Poppy wasn't going to get back with the ex anyway. So she knew that the ex was going to drop the photos anyway, and Tyler's career was going to be ruined anyway. I was so confused, because no matter what, Poppy was never going to get back with the ex. So those photos were going to drop anyway. Her whole reasoning was, I didn't want to ruin your career. Girly, his career was being ruined no matter what. You couldn't even tell him. Like, I was so confused. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Oh, you didn't want to ruin his career. Girl, his career was ruined. And I was like, wait, what? Like, you literally thought his career was already ruined. It made absolutely no sense to me. But anyway, that's besides the point. That third act conflict annoyed the fuck out of me. Let's talk about, like, what I didn't like about this book. Why sometimes smutty books are out of pocket. And especially, like, I guess with white smutty books. Because this one, I kind of was, like, into the smut sometimes. The smut was out of pocket. I read it on my phone. So I'm also filming on my phone. I can't really, like, pull up the quotes. There's, like, one scene, right, where Poppy wants to be degraded. She loves to be degraded. She's like, you dirty little slut, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, she loves that shit, okay? She loves it. Tyler's like, oh, you dirty slut, blah, 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 blah. Poppy gets off on it, and Tyler's, like, hesitant, and he says in his headspace, I was almost a women's studies major in college. I can't be saying, I respect Poppy too much. I was almost a women's studies major in college. Okay? And? What does that mean? Does that mean that you're the #1 feminist of all time? What what do you mean? I was almost a women's studies. Shut the fuck up, bro. Shut the fuck up. The things about being degraded and being a feminist, he was like, oh, I'm a feminist. I respect Poppy. Boy, she wants to be degraded. Just degrade her. I don't know. He was being so annoying about that. Stop trying to prove to everyone you're a feminist by saying you're a feminist. Shut the fuck up. And this is what I mean by you could tell that this book was written by a white woman, because they have this thing at the end of the book where Tyler doesn't become a priest anymore, right? Like, his career's ruined because he had sex with Poppy. He had, like, sexual relationship with Poppy, so he can't be a priest anymore. He talks about how he wants to help people and, like, be a really, really good guy. He spends his time to go on this mission trip. He wants to help people in Africa, build schools and build wells, and they do that whole thing. From what I know about mission trips, I've heard a lot of things about mission trips, and what I've heard is that it's pretty white savior-esque. A mission trip is just a thing so that white people can feel good about themselves. It doesn't actually do much to help the actual community that you're in. They're not actually helpful. That sometimes they can actually be very bad for the communities. That is what I've heard about mission trips. And then on top of that, they kept mentioning that Tyler goes to Africa. He goes to Africa on the mission trips to build schools and wells to, like, help the community. And he's just like, oh my God, amazing person because he went to Africa. They just generalized Africa, I guess. Like, he didn't even go to a specific country. He just went to Africa. Okay, I guess, I don't know. It just felt weird to me reading that. It felt really generalized. Like, you're just gonna make a whole generalization about the entire continent of Africa and say that you went to the continent to build schools and wells because, oh my God, Tyler's like this amazing, wondrous person who's like so noble and like is doing God's work and building schools and wells in the continent of Africa. Like, I don't know. A white woman wrote this, trying to make this man a very noble, good person. And it was not giving for me. It was not giving. Anyways, very chaotic book talk today. But that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, was these two smutty books that were just so funny, so entertaining, so funny to read, and very out of pocket. I gave Priest a 2 out of 5 stars, and from what I remember, I think I gave Hooked a 3 out of 5. Hooked was really fun. Hooked was really fun. There was just so many funny lines in that book. If you've read any of these books, please let me know your thoughts about them in the comments below. Oh my God, this is so funny too. Okay, the characters, okay, sorry, I forgot to add this. The characters, the women in these two books were hilariously horny. They were so horny, that makes no sense. Like, girls just don't get this horny. But, like, I mean, maybe they do, okay? I don't want to talk for every single girl. But it was just so funny how horny they got. Like, just immediately was horny. First of all, in Hooked, okay? Wendy, she gets kidnapped by James, aka Hook. She's literally in chains in this man's basement. In chains. And he'll just, like, stroke her cheek. He'll just go, like, and she's just, like, so wet already. In my head, I read this. I was like, stand up, girl! Stand up! Don't let this man do that to you. I literally said that out loud. Anyway, sorry for screaming, but it was so funny. She was, like, trying to be strong, right? She's just like, fuck you, Hook. Like, I didn't do anything to you. You kidnapped me. Literally traumatized her by kidnapping her. And then he'll just be like, darling. And she's just like, I'm like, girl! Stand up! Same thing goes for Poppy. Poppy will literally just be sitting there in the booth of a confessional. And she's just like, so horny already. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.